Hola todos! Welcome to Everyday Spanish with Stephanie. Today, we're going to go over one of the biggest challenges for Spanish language learners, and that's verb tenses. But don't worry, because I've got a trick that's going to make mastering these so much easier. If you've ever felt overwhelmed by all the different Spanish verb tenses or remembering when to use which one, don't worry, you're not alone. I remember when I was learning Spanish, verb tenses were my nemesis. But then I found a technique that changed everything for me, and that's the one I'm going to share with you today. So, are you ready to unlock the secret to mastering Spanish verb tenses? Let's dive in. Before we get to our trick, let's take a moment to talk about why Spanish verb tenses can be so challenging. First of all, Spanish has more tenses than English. English has about 12 verb tenses, but Spanish has 18. That alone can make your head spin. Secondly, the rules for forming these tenses can seem complicated and full of exceptions. Just when you think you've got the hang of regular verbs, along come the irregular verbs to shake things up. And let's not forget about the subjunctive mood, which doesn't even exist in English the same way it does in Spanish. It's no wonder that so many have struggled, including myself, with knowing how and when to use each tense correctly. Common mistakes that I see include mixing up the imperfect and preterite past tenses, overusing the present tense in situations that require the conditional or even the future tense, and sometimes completely not even using subjunctive tense out of fear of using it incorrectly. If any of this sounds familiar, don't worry. The trick I'm about to share with you will help simplify all of it. Now here's the mind-blowing trick. Think of Spanish tenses as families. Instead of trying to memorize all 18 tenses as separate entities, we're going to try dividing them up into families based on their relationship with each other. This approach will help you start seeing the connections and patterns between the tenses, making them so much easier to learn and remember. Okay, we're going to focus on the three main families. These families are the present family, the past family, and the future family. Each of these families includes three main tenses that are closely related to each other in both form and function. By understanding these families, you'll start to see that these tenses that you thought were completely different from one another are actually just variations on a theme. This not only simplifies the learning process, but it helps remember when and why to use each tense. In the next part of our video, we'll break down each of the three families and show you how the trick works in practice. Get ready to see verb tenses in a whole new light. Let's start with the present tense family. This family includes three key members: the present simple, the present progressive, and the present perfect. The present simple is kind of like the head of household. It's used for habitual actions, generalized truth, and scheduled events in the future. For example, yo hablo español. I speak Spanish. Next, we have the present progressive, which is used for actions happening right now. It's formed using the present tense of the verb estar plus the gerund. For example, estoy hablando español. I am speaking Spanish. Finally, there's the present perfect. This is used for events that started in the past that continue on into the present or have a present result. It's formed using the present tense of the verb haber plus the past participle. For example, he hablado español por muchos años. I have spoken Spanish for many years. See how they're all related to the present tense in some way? That's why they're all part of the same family. Now let's move on to the past tense family. This family includes the preterite, the imperfect, and the past perfect. The preterite is used for completed actions in the past. For example, yo hablé español ayer. I spoke Spanish yesterday. The imperfect is used for ongoing or habitual actions in the past. For example, yo hablaba español cuando yo era niña. I spoke Spanish when I was a child. The past perfect is used for actions that were completed before another past action. It's formed using the imperfect of haber plus a past participle. For example, yo había hablado español antes de que me mudé a España. I had spoken Spanish before I moved to Spain. All of these tenses deal with past actions, but each has a specific use. By thinking of them as a family, you can more easily understand how they relate to each other and when to use each one. Finally, let's look at the future tense family. This family includes the simple future, the conditional, and the future perfect. The simple future is used for actions that will occur in the future. For example, yo hablaré español mañana. I will speak Spanish tomorrow. The conditional tense is used for hypothetical situations or even polite requests sometimes. For example, yo hablaría el español si tuviera la oportunidad. I would speak Spanish if I had the opportunity. The future tense is used for events that will occur before a specific point in the future. It's used using the future tense of the verb haber plus the past participle. For example, para el próximo año, yo habré hablado español por 5 años, which means by next year, I will have spoken Spanish for 5 years. Again, notice how all of these tenses relate to future actions or potential actions? That's why we consider them all part of the same future tense family. By grouping these tenses into families, you can start to see the logical connections between them. This makes it easier to understand when and how to use a tense rather than trying to memorize them as 18 separate entities. In the next section, we'll demonstrate how to use this family approach with specific verbs. Get ready to see this trick in action. Now, let's see this family approach with the verb hablar, which means to speak. Let's start with the present family. For the simple present, let's say yo hablo español. I speak Spanish. The present progressive. Yo estoy hablando español. I am speaking Spanish. And finally, the present perfect. Yo he hablado español. I have spoken Spanish. Moving on to the past family. The preterite. Yo hablé español. I spoke Spanish. The imperfect. Yo hablaba español. I used to speak Spanish. And the past perfect. Yo había hablado español. I had spoken Spanish. Finally, we have the future family. The simple future. Yo hablaré español. I will speak Spanish. Conditional. Yo hablaría español. I would speak Spanish. And finally, the future perfect. Yo habré hablado español. I will have spoken Spanish. Notice how within each family, the verb stems are similar? In the present tense, we're using the first 4 letters of the word hablar, H-A-B-L, as the verb stem. The past tense actually uses the same verb stem, it just has different endings. But the future tense uses the full form of the infinitive verb hablar as its stem. This pattern holds true for most regular verbs. Once you learn the rules for each family, you can apply it to many different verbs. Let's try a quick exercise. I'm going to give you a verb and I want you to think about how you would conjugate it in each family. Let's start with the verb comer, which means to eat. Pause the video for a moment and try to conjugate the verb comer in the first person singular yo for each tense of our 3 families. Ready? Here's what you should have. For the present family, yo como, yo estoy comiendo, and he comido. In the past family, you should have yo comí, yo comía, and había comido. And for the future family, you should have yo comeré, yo comería, and yo habré comido. How did you do? Remember, practice makes perfect. To make the most of this family approach, here are some tips. Create verb family charts. Make visual aids grouping the verbs by their families. This helps reinforce the connections. Practice one family at a time. Focus on mastering one family before moving on to others. This prevents overwhelm. You can also use mnemonic devices. Create memory aids for each family. For example, PIP can stand for preterite, imperfect, and past perfect. Apply the families to your daily practice. When you learn a new verb, immediately practice it in all tenses of a family. Look for patterns in irregular verbs. Even irregular verbs often follow patterns within their families. And there you have it, the mind-blowing trick to help you master verb tenses. By thinking of tenses as families, you can simplify the learning process and more easily understand how and when to use each verb tense. Remember, mastering verb tenses takes time and practice. But with this family approach, you have a powerful tool to make the process more manageable and logical. I encourage you to start applying this family approach to your Spanish practice right away. Create family charts, practice with different verbs, and watch how quickly your understanding of Spanish verb tenses improves. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more Spanish learning tips and tricks. And don't forget to share your thoughts and experiences with this approach in the comments below. Hasta la próxima, amigos! Keep practicing and soon you'll be conjugating verbs like a Spanish pro. Thanks for watching, amigos! If you're serious about improving your language skills, I have a great resource for you to try. Check out the Unacademy Languages app. It offers a wide range of lessons from beginner to advanced with native speaker audio and interactive lessons. To learn more, click on the link in the description below. It's a great complement to the tips and the strategies that we discuss in this channel. Keep learning, keep practicing, and I'll see you in the next video. Hasta luego!